Saddle soreness is something that has or will affect cyclists at one point or another. If you've ever come home from a ride a little tender downstairs, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Saddle sores can be just a little bit of discomfort for some. For others, it may actually require medical attention. We have come to Endura HQ in Edinburgh because they say they've got the solution. If you don't know what a saddle sore is, you're probably one of the very few people who haven't experienced it on the bike. Generally speaking as well, women tend to actually suffer from this a little bit more than men. If you are suffering from saddle sores, there are 3 things that you can look into which might help you. Number 1, your saddle and your bike fit. Number 2, are you applying any chamois cream? And number 3, checking out which bib shorts are best for you, which is actually why we're here. Seeing as we are at the Endura HQ in Edinburgh, we thought we'd have a little look around because it is actually where they still make all their custom clothing. These workers are essentially sewing the kit together themselves, but it actually involves kind of matching up the pattern as well, so it's really, really specific. The silicone is done with this like crazy looking machine, and it just kind of goes up and down, which is pretty mesmerising if you ask me. So I'm also joined today by Pam, Endura's brand director. So Pam, just talk to me a little bit about why it's important to kind of get a pair of bib shorts, or especially the seat pad that's, you know, specifically designed for women.
Women and men are biologically very, very different. Bikes were designed for men, and they probably wouldn't have been designed the way they were if they were designed by women. I often use the analogy of your entire body weight on your eyeball when describing what it is in terms of the pressure that you put on that part of your body. You know, it's the most sensitive part of a female's anatomy that you are effectively sitting on. And it obviously is more pronounced with a more aggressive ride position versus a more upright position. There's no other sport that really puts that kind of pressure in that zone. And I suppose working with lots of World Tour athletes over the years, a number of the female riders have had to resort to surgery, and you know, it's really, really traumatic impact that it can have on your whole lifestyle. So yeah, it's absolutely critical. So being able to ride harder, longer with the right pad means that women avoid surgery and also avoid dropping out of the sport.
So can you just tell us a little bit about what Endura are doing a little bit differently, or what kind of sets you guys apart from other shorts that are out there?
So I suppose the whole design philosophy is centred around the lived ride experience of a female biology in 2 elements. So the pad, and then secondly, in terms of the function of the actual garment. So the pad that you're talking about is has medical grade silicone in it that will never bottom out. So that allows you to dissipate the pressure that would otherwise be in this one spot and spread it, share it over a wider area, allowing you to ride harder for longer. So our philosophy that we have a name for it, is Ergonomistry, and it is our partnership with Burt, who I'm sure you heard quite a lot about.
Where do we start with Burt then? Let's just say he is a little bit of a legend. He started off as a physio, and then for many, many years he actually has helped the likes of Team GB, Team Sky, and some incredible athletes at the Olympics to get medals, basically by working on comfort to kind of aid with performance.
So the starting point is not simply the aesthetic, the starting point has to be comfort and function. And comfort is one of these whooshy words, but actually comfort equates to performance. If you're not comfortable, you will not be able to ride extended rides and to the same sort of intensity that you ought to. The second element is around, on this particular bib short, and on many in a range, we've got the drop seat function.
Yes.
So women, biologically, need to go to the toilet for whatever reason more frequently than guys, and you can't just, pull it out next to a tree and off you go. Some guys riding along can, empty their bladders, but we can't. Being able to have that drop seat function that allows you a swift and fluid ability to sit down, go to the toilet, do what you need to do, and then back up on your way again, as opposed to multiple minutes of taking multiple layers off, and that waste of time and that just irritant of not being part of the group because you've got to go off somewhere, and all of that just is an additional hurdle for women. So those two things, the absolutely critical pad comfort, and then secondly, designed to function for the women's biology and what our bodies need.
I can 100% see that, because again, like going out on group rides myself with shorts that didn't have a drop seat, it's a pain, especially, you know, if you're not near a toilet and you have to go for a little wild wee or something like that. It's just not that easy, especially in the winter, taking off layers. So I think, you know, you guys are kind of making it easier for women to actually stay in the sport, like you said earlier, and I think that's such a huge thing. You know, we've all seen like the rise in popularity in cycling for women, especially with like the Paris-Roubaix and obviously the Tour this year. So yeah, super, super exciting what you guys are doing, and I'm loving it. So the actual process of the custom kit at Endura is absolutely incredible to watch. It starts by loading the design into a big printer, and then the individual pieces of the kit get cut out. So for example, a jersey is made up of lots of different little panels. So like you've got your side panels, the front, the back, the pockets, and all of these are cut out individually. But this is where it gets really exciting. You can actually see the design of the patterns then printed on these big industrial looking printers, and then this is what is actually applied to the fabric that you've just been seeing get cut out. And it goes into essentially a big presser, which is basically like a big iron, and it kind of heat transfers the pattern onto the actual material now. Anyway, now that you've seen how Endura make their custom kit, let's go back to the Ergonomistry project and check out the best women's bib shorts on the market. So I'm here with Ian, the product category manager here at Endura. So Ian, can you actually just give us a little bit of background on the Ergonomistry project and what it is you're actually trying to do?
Okay, so what we're trying to do with the Ergonomistry project is to tackle the contact points on the bike, you know, increase rider comfort, which enhances performance. You know, in cycling, these two are often not brought together, but you know, it's fairly obvious that the comfier you are, the better you perform.
And so why is it that you actually started with women's bib shorts kind of in your process of the Ergonomistry project?
Yes, obviously we sell more men's bib shorts than we do for women, but we're very aware from our research, from our knowledge, the riders that we speak to, and also the kind of feedback that Phil brought into the project, that women actually suffer a lot more serious issues than men in terms of saddle comfort or saddle discomfort, you know, and you know, you hear about female athletes, female riders at all levels who actually, you know, suffer more than discomfort. You know, they're getting properly injured by riding their bikes and just putting up with the pain. So that's why we wanted to kind of tackle that area. Yeah,
I've actually read quite a few articles about women almost actually having to have surgery, especially I think there was a big thing about like Team GB and stuff like that. I mean, so yeah, it's awesome that you guys are actually kind of trying to tackle that. So what is it that you're actually trying to solve then?
What we're trying to do is, most kind of saddle discomfort is caused by, you know, pressure points, you know, too much pressure in one area. So what we're trying to do is spread the load on the saddle, change the seat pad that's in the shorts to manage that load better. With women it's really hard as well because there's a real variety of female presentations in the saddle. Soft tissue arrangement is very different, whereas in men it's very similar across different men. So that makes the problem worse, you know, and it makes it harder to actually make these pads.
So can you tell us a little bit about kind of like the research or the design process that went into the project?
Yes, again, we have a reasonably good idea of what issues there were out there. We knew what problems we wanted to solve. Phil brought a lot of that knowledge in as well. So we kind of took what were our kind of best women's chamois at the time, which you can see at the far end there, which is like a multi-density foam and looked at ways of making it better. Like Phil had some experience, and again, his kind of medical background, working with different materials that we weren't using at the time, had the experience of working with female riders, and what he was doing was using really kind of simple application, a bit like we've done here in the early prototypes, of medical grade silicone, which is just put in the areas that they were suffering really bad pressure points. And you can see how kind of rustic that is. So that was the early stage testing was done at this point. So that was kind of bringing in new materials to our pads, looking at where we could place those materials and evolve it from there. Again, that kind of evolution, you know, it starts with this kind of idea, and you're testing on 1 or 2 riders. You know, Phil's work as a bike fit clinic, and you know, knowing riders with problems and riders who don't have problems, who are happy with their saddles, we were able to form quite a big test group. Yeah. So we started working with a large test group of women, went through about, you know, 6 or 7 iterations of, you know, applying this medical grade silicone in different places. You can see again a fairly rustic example of how we started kind of refining it down a little bit, and then we started working on some new processes with our pad supplier to actually get that silicone integrated into the pad in a much more kind of finished and, you know, commercial way.
I mean, even that, just the difference between that and that is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's nice to actually see like the different kind of design processes right in front of you there.
Yeah, and it looks relatively simple, but you know, this was like months of work, you know, of working out what could work, where we could put it, you know, what how much silicone to use, what type of silicone we were using. I'd say it was all new materials, and we worked very collaboratively with our pad suppliers. You know, this was a new technique for them to develop, you know, to make our pads the way the silicone's applied to the pad. It's actually poured into a reservoir rather than being a pre-molded silicone piece that goes in. So as I say, this was completely new to them, but all of that work going on collaboratively between us, the pad supplier, and with Phil's input and the rider input along the way.
So obviously there's a lot of silicone kind of in there, and you've kind of combined it with the foam. A big kind of issue with saddle discomfort can be like moisture. So is this still kind of moisture wicking, or what's the deal with that?
Yeah, again, you know, that's probably why we didn't like go down this route. You know, you got massive amounts of silicone. Like you say, you really need to make sure there's good moisture management. So the top sheets are always high wicking, but there are these blocking parts of silicone, but cutting them down and making sure that, you know, they're well channeled and you've got very open foams around them that they're mounted in, then that cuts down any problems with, you know, build up of moisture.
So Ian, how about the actual pad then, putting it into the short? How important is it, you know, that the shorts kind of fit you to alleviate discomfort?
Yeah, obviously it's like critical that you've got a good fitting short, so that it, well, one, it holds the pad in the right place, you know, and it sits in the right place to alleviate the pressure build-up that you've got, you know, and the fit of the short has to be right for that. I mean, that's where it was more of an Endura thing rather than a Phil thing, because, you know, we've got years of experience of developing shorts. You've seen the product we've got downstairs, you know, we make product here, so we're able to, you know, use our pattern knowledge, and at the same time as we're developing these new pads, we'll be putting them in shorts, and those will be going out to riders to test as well. So this was all developed alongside a new short pattern with a new bib to ensure all the fit, you know, were working together as they were developed through the process.
So how should your bib shorts actually fit?
Tight. Like, I think that's like the one mistake that most people make. You can put a lycra short on that's like a size too big for you, and you can easily think that fits well, but I always encourage people to try the size down. You know, stick your hand down. If you can get your hand too far down the short, it's too tight. It just needs to be like part of you, basically, you know, so that it's moving with all the movement that you do. Yeah. Like saddles is such a unique sport, cycling, where you're kind of stationary sitting in one place, but your legs are moving, and, you know, certain parts of your body are moving and other parts are completely stationary. So you need it to be kind of moving with your skin, with your limbs really well, or else you're going to get rubbing, you're going to get movement and discomfort.
I was just going to say, because obviously if it's not kind of tight against you, that could actually cause kind of like the chafing itself, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Like no matter if you've got the perfect seat pad in there, if it's not staying in that place, then that's definitely going to cause some issues. Yeah,
if it's moving about, it'll rub, or if it's not in the right place, it's never going to do its job. So those two things are critical.
It's often, I guess, a bit of a misconception that, you know, performance fit isn't comfortable, but what do you kind of think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is really key to the EGM project that we're trying to do with Phil. It's something that he's really passionate about as well. You know, as I said at the start, his work with some of the highest performance athletes in the world was all about making them comfortable on their bikes so that it improved performance. It is not about the glory of suffering that we all talk about in road cycling. You need to be comfortable to perform well, or your body's not going to do its job.
And I guess that kind of relates back to your everyday kind of cyclist like you and I. We want to be comfortable as well. I guess from my point of view, you know, if I'm not comfortable, I might kind of shift my weight on my saddle a little bit, and then I'm not getting the most from myself, like pushing down on the pedals.
Yeah, totally. That will affect your performance. You know, all of that stuff. Any movement takes away from the energy you've got to put into riding. It takes away from the efficiency of your pedalling. But also, I mean, it is a good point that we didn't talk about when we were talking about why we did women's saddles first, or seat pads first, is that, you know, it's a massive barrier, you know, to actually getting into cycling. If you buy a bike and you start riding and you're just not comfortable, and you're not kind of sure what to do about that and how to get comfier in the saddle, then you just stop it. And we know that that exists a lot more with women than it does with men.
Quite often when, you know, the whole saddle discomfort kind of comes up, people initially straight into conversation say, go and get your saddle checked, go and get a bike fit. Is that kind of the first thing that people should be doing?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination, you know, of having a good fitting bike, a decent saddle, and, you know, a good pair of bib shorts. And they're all important, but I think if you've got a bike that you know is the right size, you know, you've got your saddle at the right height in a comfortable position, you don't really need a professional bike fit at that stage. Definitely make sure you've got a good saddle that is women specific for women, that is roughly the right size if you know what size you need, and then get a good pair of bib shorts next. Because that kind of interaction between saddle and bib shorts is so critical. I think it's kind of doing each thing in steps, you know, change one thing at a time if you are changing things. You know, so if you don't have a women's specific saddle, make sure you get one, and make sure you've got some good bib shorts to get that interaction right. You can mess about with your saddle height a little bit and your bike position a little bit yourself, and if it's still bad, then definitely go and get a professional bike fit. Again, it depends how far, how long you're in the saddle, how bad the issues are, I guess.
Yeah, and then I guess obviously there's chamois cream thrown into the mix as well, but from your point of view, would you say getting your bib shorts initially sorted, that's the way to go first?
Oh, 100%, yeah, bib shorts. Add a decent saddle. I think it's really good now that a lot of bikes used to come with pretty cheap saddles, but, you know, OE saddles are much better than they were, so as long as you're buying a decent level of bike, the saddle will probably be pretty good. So make sure you invest in bib shorts, make all the difference.